Colin, the
Yeah.
floor is yours.
So I will do my introduction as well. And Doug, thanks for coming. Um, Thanks everybody for coming. It's pretty exciting to be able to present on this. I'm pretty passionate about it. Yeah, so I played a little over a decade in the NHL, retired, went back to BU, degree in psychology, so slightly outside of this realm, although it does actually play a part in it. And yeah, I've gone into impact investing in this space. So I won't go too much further into it because it then blends a little bit into the presentation. So I'll try to start this thing off. Is everybody we're on my screen? Perfect. All right, so that's my pretty nuclear beginning. So thank you again for coming to the presentation. So to begin with, I am a hockey player. I recognize my limitations. I'm not a nuclear physicist. I'm just an advocate, and so it's cool to hear somebody has an engineering degree. A lot of really good prerequisites here, so I think it could make it for a good discussion. But with humility, I recognize my my limitations on this subject. Um, so I got in like I said previously, impacting investing in this space. I'm always about where you get the biggest bang for your buck, and I actually found that to be through investment. But in terms of advocacy, the biggest bang for your buck I found is in nuclear energy. The more research I did on it, the more I realized that to advocate for it can go the furthest in our ability to decarbonize, in my opinion. Um, and I'm branding it as a Nita Kardashian's publicist because again, it is just kind of like a celebrity who went through a rough patch who is trying to get back on their feet and rebrand their product. And I think nuclear really is works in parallel with that analogy. And to keep things a little bit lighter this morning, um, these are my contents. Je ne sais pas. We don't need to go into it, but yeah, to begin with, what is nuclear? And I'm talking about nuclear fission, not nuclear fusion. So nuclear fission is the splitting of atoms. It creates a chain reaction, releasing neutrons, which then splits more atoms. And that's my very layman understanding of it, but it's against so that's nuclear fission. Nuclear fusion is two atoms coming together to create a new atom. And when that happens, it releases energy. That's how the sun sustains itself. We're not quite there yet. Somebody's produced nuclear fusion energy for, I don't even know, a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a millisecond, but that's actually very promising. And that'll be a bit of a winner takes all, or I will be incredibly excited once they figured that out. Microsoft they're saying they just invested in helium, which apparently can do it in 5 years. I don't believe it, but I really hope they can. So yeah, so why are we talking about this? The grid. The grid is 24 to 26% of our emissions globally annually. So that's why we are decarbonizing the grid. We're moving to renewables. At the same time, that's why we're moving to electric vehicles, at least here in the States, pushing towards that. Because then you take care of 40 to 50% of emissions those by combining those two. And obviously the nuclear is hooked up to that grid. Um, so decarbonizing the grid. This is actually okay. This is all everything went smoothly, and apparently I've brought up the the wrong clip here. Let me figure this out. Sorry.
Jackie, are you back in the US or are you still overseas?
I'm still overseas. I'm kind of living here permanently now, so this is home.
What? All that Italian food just took you down. That's it. We've lost you.
Yeah, and thankfully, miraculously, I haven't gained a shit ton of weight.
That's what playing
Yeah.
hockey professionally does for you.
Every day is game day.
How is
Yeah.
have you guys been impacted by the flooding?
Actually, one of my colleagues is from that region. It's about a 2-hour drive from where I am now. and we packed up a van with a bunch of supplies for her to bring down. A lot of people lost their homes, like everything's covered in mud. It's, like perfect storm of climate change. Drought met with major rain, like they had no chance. So, yeah, thankfully we're fine here though. Um, we're a bit away from it, so.
And is this season over now?
Yeah, fully in the off season.
How'd you guys do this year?
We didn't do so well. No, we won the Italian
Happens.
league, and then we in the European league we I guess lost in the first round. So
Got it.
yeah, hopefully
Right.
next year's better. We're in recruiting phase now. The coaches this year are like including me on all the recruiting calls. I'm like, what am I doing here?
They're grooming you to
know
be a
why.
coach
Yeah, hopefully not too soon.
or a player coach.
Yeah, slap shot.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Jackie, you're in power play number 1 again today.
Oh no, how could that have happened?
All right, I'm gonna do this. There's you're gonna show. I guess I can show off my ability to memorize things because most of this there's something happening with the presentation, but I guess you know, change on the fly, make adjustments as you go. Go to the dump and
Got a friendly audience, so go to
yeah,
town.
change. You got to change the
Wait a minute.
forecheck. Yeah,
Change
yeah,
on the fly. Isn't that hockey?
yeah. That's a nice little hockey reference. So this is gonna. I typically had a very. Maybe you guys can just pin my face there, but yeah. So decarbonizing the grid. What you would see on this slide is that 10% of the grid throughout the world, 10% is from nuclear energy, and then what I was showing this is actually 20% comes from nuclear in the United States. I'm currently in New Jersey. My lights that are on right now, 46% is coming from nuclear connected to the grid, showing you that it's actually already a working technology. So most people talk about renewables, and I had a very nice artificial intelligence picture on display that you won't get to see. I'll send it in an email. But yeah, the limits on renewables that we're going to talk about mostly is intermittency. And they've done studies. So the study is to go to 100% renewables, you need 3 weeks of energy storage. So currently from a battery storage component, the longest that is currently being touted as 100 hours, which is obviously quite a bit shy. There's other ways of storing energy that haven't come to maturity yet. But yeah, so there it is, the intermittency of it. We need consistency. I'm from Winnipeg, Manitoba. And if it's minus 40 Celsius out, and the sun hasn't shone, and it doesn't because there's barely any sunshine past 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the wind isn't blowing, I'm going to want to turn my lights. I'm going to want to turn on my heat. It's kind of I'm used to that ability to have consistent energy, and I think everybody's used to that, and I don't think we need to get away from that. And I don't know if renewables and battery storage is necessarily up to the task quite yet. So that's when we go to the misunderstood zero emissions energy that is nuclear. So there are no emissions with it. It's not a renewable energy source, but it doesn't release emissions, obviously a slight amount when they are mining for uranium and enriching it, but that's a very small amount. Typically after it's been mined and enriched, you are using the same rod for about 5 years before it's turned over. It's a very dense energy. There are currently 440 nuclear reactors currently in the world right now, 93 in the States. So again, it is kind of all around us, but the major concerns, obviously nuclear safety. So this would be your, the biggest concern. And we can go to, I guess, the big three incidences, which are the Fukushima. So Fukushima death toll was actually at 0 by the World Health Organization, 0 from the blast itself, and also I get World Health Organization. What I'm using to produce or to look at the data also says 0 in terms of radiation. Some people debate that it's anywhere from 0 to 100, which I'm not going to make light of anybody's deaths, but still pretty low numbers. Three Mile Island, 0 death toll as well. And there wasn't actually any radiation in the environment to be noted of. Chernobyl, horrible. They're all horrible. Chernobyl was a bit of a disaster. 32 immediately, 4,000 due to radiation, but it was Soviet Russia, and they didn't have a containment around their nuclear reactors. So, we made it. That was generation 2 technology. We're now on generation 4. And even then, that was in Soviet Russia without a containment center. So, I mean, there's a lot of safety being put in place for this. The nuclear waste is, of course, the other issue. This is typically what people think of it as, and maybe I'll have to once I get the pictures up, because in reality, it's actually in. I have the other pictures, but you can see it on the right. It's actually how they transport it, but it's a dry cask storage. So it is steel. They take the rods. It's a solid waste. It is not a gooey fluorescent product. It is a solid substance. These use rods that is then put into steel, that is then put in a concrete cask and constantly monitored for radiation until it is ready to be disposed of. Most countries do have a place to dispose. The US needs to work on that, but it will be a major part of the process. But even then, the actual waste that is radiation, or that has high level radiation, is only 1 to 3% that is considered high level radiation. 97% of it has a short half-life that typically burns itself off and is no longer radioactive. Very early on. It doesn't take hundreds of years to break down. Nuclear energy, providing one person with energy for a year, produces 1 Coke can of waste, but only 5 grams of that being high-level radioactive waste. The U.S. produces 2,000 tons of this waste per year. It fits in half of an Olympic swimming pool. But it seems like a lot. But I mean, that is for 70 million homes. That's electricity for a lot of people. So it's still a pretty good amount. I think the other I was going to do. Well, we'll go into this as well. So what even is radioactivity? And there's other people who could probably, speak on this a little bit better than me, but it's the loss of electrons in an atom. Everybody's radioactive. I'm radioactive. You're radioactive. A banana is radioactive. When you go on a plane, you're exposed to radiation. So we tend to think of radioactivity. Obviously, there's high levels, and it's not good to have for high level radioactivity, but to actually have an understanding of what radioactivity is kind of takes the stigma away from it. You can't get away from it. Our whole environment is radioactive to an extent, not high level. This is a waste comparison. A lifetime is considerably lower than coal. So I think that there's two proposals on how to get rid of the waste. Deep geological disposal. You would see somebody making a large hole down into the earth for where it can be stored. So that is one proposal, and I think it's going to be a part of nuclear energy moving forward. But this is the big one. It's reuse the waste, which France is already doing, and Russia is already doing. They're reprocessing it, so you can actually get more. You're literally recycling the uranium, the spent uranium and plutonium. You're recovering it, enriching it again, so you actually get to use your waste more. It's actually been calculated that all the waste that we have right now, if we did this processing, could basically give electricity to the planet for the next 100 years. So it's out there. So what these slides, I'm pretty sure would be, let me just go to myself. Yeah, so basically to start off with Germany. So Germany, I think as an example, they shut down all 17 of their nuclear reactors. They went to purely solar, and in doing so are now back to burning coal. So I think that goes to show you right now that we don't necessarily have the technology, and not everybody has the geography for solar and wind to work, the renewables. So you do need base load, and you need a dependent complement to solar and to wind. Again, this isn't me being like we should get rid of those. It's more of a complementary kind of cousin. And on the other side of that would be France. So France has 70% of their electricity is from nuclear, and they actually have such an excess of it that they sell it, and they make 3 billion euros per year selling their excess electricity to other countries. So, I mean, and that's 70% of no emissions electricity, and something to, and they have a dependable source. So those are obviously the two kind of competing case examples that we can use moving forward. And the U.S. Department of Energy, they are betting on it. I think that they recognize that we need baseload technology and a dependable technology. So they've put $6 billion to preserve America's nuclear fleet, and they've increased the budget and new generation technologies, which I will talk about next. Which there would be a nice, pretty picture here typically, but small modular reactors. This is kind of the big thing, and what's being funded right now. It's considered Generation 4 technology. Usually, nuclear plants are around 1,000 megawatts. This is smaller, around 300 megawatts and smaller. And basically, what it does is, well, the main thing is the economics. I'll go into that after, but there's less fuel. Less fuel, and then if something were to happen, it'd be a lower evacuation radius. Less of the environment would actually be impacted by it, but they also have built-in technologies that shut down the plant without somebody having to hit a button. They use the physics, and I'm not a physicist, but just regular physics is used to shut down the reactor versus somebody having to, I did watch the Chernobyl series before I got hype on nuclear, so I knew that somebody had to hit the button. But some fun facts about nuclear. There are 11 U.S. aircraft carriers currently that use nuclear to fuel their aircraft carriers. So because it's dependable, they're away from being able to refuel. And I mean, they don't have a wind turbine on it. Obviously, this, for the density. Not to get again, I'm invested in those types of things, but nuclear is a very dense energy and a dependable energy, so that's why it's used. The other is that NASA is using it to potentially power a Mars mission, so another very cool thing. So another two great use cases moving forward is first desalination. So within desalination, obviously we're dealing with water scarcity. Desalination is a technology that's already been proven, but it is not economical, and the density and the energy of nuclear makes it more economical and more reliable output. And the other is pink hydrogen, which I don't know if everybody's done their reading on hydrogen, but it's green hydrogen if it comes from renewable, so wind. It's basically, if you guys don't know actually how to create hydrogen is taking an electrolyzer, basically putting an electric current into water, and you're just splitting the hydrogen from the oxygen and water, and that hydrogen then becomes a type of combustible fuel, kind of mimics fossil fuels, but it's not. Again, I'm not an engineer, but it is used similarly to fossil fuels, and be a little bit easier for us. But yes, so so nuclear actually will produce pink hydrogen, so we can sit there and use the electricity of nuclear and just pump out hydrogen and actually create a large source of it that can then be used throughout throughout your country or throughout the world. The only thing is economist reservations. Nuclear is expensive. It's very expensive. There's run over costs. This is actually, if anybody was like, well, it costs a lot, I'd be like, yeah, it does. And I hope that'd be the only thing that actually stops it from getting implemented is the economics of it. But this is where small modular reactors actually come into play, because basically to create a reactor, you need to borrow money. If you borrow money, you're paying a high interest rate. And if there's overrun costs, but it's a very big, complicated plant, and 2-3 years overrun is you're paying off your debt and you're not making any income, and it just kind of compounds and compounds. So small modular reactors, they actually build the reactors off site, and they bring them onto site once they're already built. So this will bring down construction cost, time, reliability, dependability. So that's what they're hoping for with these small modular reactors. Also, they can take advantage of economies of scale. You can build 100 off-site. So if you build 100, it brings down the price. Then they can start shipping them out to different places for them to be constructed. So that's actually the very exciting thing about small modular reactors, is it's honestly just more so taking care of the economics. So yeah, summarize why you could advocate. Safer than people think. Safer, can complement wind and solar. Make sure that our fleet is not decommissioned, because 2/3 of reactors are set to expire in developed nations. 6 out of 10 in the United States are up for renewal by 2025. Basically, all of the added renewable energy that we have put onto the grid so far has actually been completely negated by how many nuclear plants have been shut down. So we're emitting just as much carbon into the atmosphere by shutting down these nuclear plants. So I think that that's something to really keep in mind. An inability to extend these nuclear plants would require solar and wind to have to roll out 3 times faster, and actually a $1.6 trillion more in investment than current. And the effective way, to go into policy, you guys can look this up a little bit further, but it's typically policies to incentivize small modular reactor development, streamlining permitting for new reactor construction. But you guys can look into all this further. These are my references, and hopefully everybody just had it pinned on my face. This was a much prettier presentation, but hope you enjoyed. You too, Duke.
Nice.
I think it was more focused because we weren't distracted by any pretty pictures.
Exactly. Yeah. But I'll send you some. I created some real nice AI from OpenAI. I got some cool pictures. I'll send it to you. I'm trying to rebrand.
We also did this last night, and there wasn't the glitch. So when I send out the presentation for everybody to see who couldn't join, I'll use last night's presentation, so then you'll see it all if you want to see it again. And
you don't have to.
But great job on the fly.
Just making adjustments in between periods.
You know, maybe you're 2 men down and still you kept the goal clean.
You always just got to adjust the forecheck.
Yes. And so with that, I have a couple questions, but I'm going to open it up to the champions and to Patches to ask away, and then I'll ask mine later. Anybody want to take a first shot? We'll go with Patches.
Okay. I'll try to be quick because I have more than one comment and question. Thank you so much, Colin. Totally embrace the fact that you're not a scientist, because most of the people you're talking to aren't either. So, it's great to have that kind of delivery and language that's understandable to someone like me. So that's very refreshing to hear. Quick question about the nuclear aircraft. So does that mean it's zero emissions?
Yeah, it would be. Aside from the planes taking off on it, but the aircraft carrier itself would be no emissions. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Anything that's nuclear is no emissions.
Right. Yeah, that's wonderful. And that works well with our eco athletes tenet of trying to find zero to no emissions aircraft travel. So that's fantastic. This is not really a message for anyone beyond this group, but I just had an interesting connection. If anyone's heard of the blue zones, it's a guy who studied places on the earth where there's people who live well beyond 100 in a healthy way. There's only one spot in the United States where it is, but I think it's Sardinia. If you wanted to look it up, Colin, there's a spot where one of the reasons they actually attribute their health and longevity is because they tend to soak in these springs that are slightly radioactive. So the question is there like this sort, because when you have cancer, you get
radiation.
treatment, right? So they wonder if the mild radioactivity. So of course, that's not a message that would translate beyond people who are already on board. So I'm not saying put it in your presentation, but for your own interest, you might want to look it up. I think it's Sardinia, but I'm not sure. The other thing that I wanted to suggest is, the death toll is always the most sticky point to talk about. So I was curious if you could find, and then would maybe want to include when you talk about the relative safety of nuclear power beyond what people expect. There's a lot of really dirty and more dangerous, I think, I haven't looked the numbers up, but like coal, come on, they must have a higher death toll. I mean, just for the workers, let alone the emissions and like fracking. So if you could maybe include comparisons to other more traditional energy and the death tolls associated with those, it might even strengthen the argument about nuclear.
Yeah, I actually had that. And
there was a slide?
Yeah, actually, here, I'll do this. We're going back to
going old school.
Going back to me. So you guys can see this?
There we go.
Yeah, so this is our World in Data, a nonprofit data site. But yeah, so obviously you go through coal, oil, natural gas, biomass, hydropower. I mean, like nuclear energy there's less deaths.
Okay. So you're already on it.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, because now everybody can actually see it. And I'm glad that I went through and found it. But yeah, I mean, it's an incredibly safe energy source, because even within the waste, like we actually have a way of discarding the waste. There's actually a plan for it versus coal. I had one of those slides in a quick comparison, but they're 450 million a year tons of waste gets shot up into the atmosphere, and it's all radioactive, and people are just breathing that in. And I mean, that's why you see such a large death count for coal. So yeah, glad you brought that up, so I could pull that up for the crew. I think it definitely hits home a little bit better.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I have. I make room for others.
I just want to add something. I think you guys might have been talking about different things earlier. Patches, you were talking about, I think, like flying in the air, actually aircraft, and Colin was talking about aircraft carriers.
Oh, got you.
So I don't think we have nuclear powered planes that are.
I was so excited about that.
I know. I think a good idea, but I just wanted to clarify that, because I think.
Thank you.
Yeah,
but
Patches
that's where
wants to be the next Top Gun. Patches is going for the next Top Gun.
Right. I like it.
Actually,
carrier.
Patches just laid down the dream
that
right. Then will become a reality. We're going to call it the Patches dream.
Oh my gosh, no.
Yes. Yes.
If you're interested in alternative fuels, I mean, so Airbus has invested a lot into green hydrogen for planes, and they actually have already flown their first flight using green hydrogen. Battery technologies are too dense; they're too heavy, so taking off doesn't make sense. Or you get like 30-minute flights, but there are people who, I mean, there's advancements all the time, and now somebody else is claiming they can on a battery, but hydrogen is proven, and again, the way that it mimics fossil fuels, and we already have kind of that infrastructure for it, could set things up pretty well.
I think Jackie, you wanted to weigh in with a question.
Yeah. I guess I want to start with just seconding what Patches says. I think you're doing an awesome job explaining the technologies, and like, even with the science background that I have, like, don't sell yourself short, because everything, like you nailed it on all of the points that you made. I really enjoyed they use the physics, though. I'm definitely gonna use that in the future. Super funny. Okay, I had a couple of thoughts. First, I think the modular reactor stuff is really, really promising. I think that's a really interesting space. And I was just wondering if you knew more about where the development of it was. Like, what are we close to actually implementing things that look like that? Or
yeah, I can send you guys there's actually quite a few companies now that are doing it, but the main ones are NuScale, NuScale. It's actually publicly traded. So if
Okay.
anybody's into the stock market, you can actually buy it. It's going to be highly volatile. So, but anyways, yeah. So a lot of these small modular reactors are signing deals with electrical companies, utility companies, because they're trying, again, you have to order like 4 or 5 of them for the economics to make sense, but they are signing. So like Excel, Con Ed, they're all beginning to sign them. But the three main ones, well, 4, Rolls-Royce is doing one too. But so NuScale, TerraPower is Bill Gates, and they're big on reusing the fuel. TerraPower, and so big fan of that. And then there's X Energy. So those are the 3. X Energy is about to be a publicly traded company as well. They're all they're not doing IPOs, but they're getting themselves in the market. But they by 2030 there should be probably around 5 or 6 small modular reactors, and it's honestly going to be like crunch time for them, because the whole thing about nuclear is the economics of it, and them saying it's going to take a year to build and it takes 5 years. But so hopefully everything goes well, because if it does, then more people will be likely to put money into it and adopt it.
Cool. Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that's really the future. I thought maybe it would be interesting for you guys to share some stuff from my master's on cost overruns. So one of the more recent projects of nuclear in the US was it's the Vogel plant. I don't remember, South Carolina. It went like 19 years over its plan. And part of the interesting part about that is that we've kind of aged out and retired all of our expertise in the States, because we haven't built for so long. We had like a big buildup in the 70s, and then all those people retired, and now there aren't the experts to do the installations. And there was a really scary incident in that installation where the company that was x-raying the welds was actually falsifying their records. And you have to be very precise with your safety on a nuclear power plant. So there's just some like really interesting case studies of things going on. And the other thing that I wanted to share that I thought might be interesting, maybe also for you, Colin, is that we operate our nuclear power plants in the US differently than they operate them in France, for example. So in the US, we have this operations philosophy that they shouldn't be ramped up and ramped down. They should always just kind of operate at this base level demand. And in France, it's actually really normal operating for them to ramp up and ramp down. So you could see how that would have a really different complementary situation with renewables if you could ramp up and ramp down. So there's not like a takeaway from that, other than I thought it was an interesting fact and maybe relevant for you guys.
Yeah, I think it's good to think about that. The US has regulatory policies that certainly need to be tampered. I don't know, tampered is the correct way of saying it, but yeah, so something like that. I mean, that the different ways of using nuclear to have different results. Yeah, it's very interesting to hear.
Any other questions? Margot.
Some questions. This one just Jackie, continuing on what you were saying. If the expertise is retiring and aging out of the nuclear industry in the States, is there any effort to retrain, or is everybody just all the kids are going into AI? Like, are we doing what's happening? Sounds like in Europe, maybe they're currently training, building, but I don't know. It sounds like we're not moving quickly enough in this space. Is that right, Colin, Jackie?
I'm gonna say something and then I'll leave, which is I can't speak to France, but it seems to me that when in countries where nuclear is either going backwards, as in Germany, or where it's treading water, or slightly being left to wither on the vine, as in the US, a lot of that is due to reaction, or some would say overreaction, to things like Fukushima. Like, you could basically look at Germany, which had a humongous part of their energy load coming from nuclear, and the shift happened almost on a dime after Fukushima. In the US, you know, in New York, right across the Hudson River from where I'm sitting in New Jersey, you know, the Indian Point reactor was shut down. And that was kind of vestigial to 3 Mile Island, um, you know, and then it happened during the time of post Fukushima as well. And then this kind of like progressive view of nuclear power as bad or dangerous because they haven't solved the waste, or the perception of having not solved the waste problem. And so they shut it down. Indian Point meant that, in the shutdown of Indian Point means that New York now has to get a good chunk of its power from now natural gas, some from hydro from Canada, but it's more fossil fuels in New York as a result of Indian Point going down. And so a good chunk of it is political, and a good chunk of that comes from these, Fukushima, 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, which are going back decades. I'll yield back.
Yeah, so the Department of Energy actually has it in their budget on spending in nuclear that they plan on retraining, getting the training program on nuclear back. So there is money being put into it to incentivize people to get into it. And again, I mean, it is a very exciting. I would be very excited if I had the bandwidth to do so. So I think that they are incentivizing people that way. And I'll also touch on this just because people aren't wrong necessarily to worry about Fukushima, 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl. It's actually, I'll dive into psychology since I'm a big fan of it. It's been shown that we have a negativity bias and something called availability heuristics. So they work together. So you have availability heuristics. So whatever is easiest to retrieve, we believe to be most true, and we'll bring that up. And then we also have a negativity bias, which means that we are biased to negative things. So something like Chernobyl, these disasters, you remember these negative things more, and then they're easier to retrieve. So you hear nuclear, you very quickly go, oh, explosion, explosion. So it's kind of, yeah. So that's the psychology of it. If you guys are into Daniel Kahneman or something like that,
That's why you don't want to be an umpire, because people
Yeah.
remember the calls that you blow. No one remembers, man, that was one hell of a strike call you just made.
Exactly.
I think also on this same topic, it's worth, like, the psychology of the current energy system is very invisible. Like coal's pollution, the air pollution, the carbon dioxide, it's all very invisible. And it's not these big shock events. It's just like seeping through everything. And I think that makes it challenging given those psychological problems that we have.
Yeah.
And then and it was brought up last night, the other part of it is the issue of nuclear power getting in the hands of bad actors. And, we discussed a little bit about, and I want to bring that up here because I think that's an important part of the discussion. So, Colin, maybe you could share what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. Mine is, again, that I'm not well versed in it, except for, I guess, your enriched uranium is going to be like a very difficult process. It's not like going in and holding up a bank. I think that you have to get radioactive material out of a out of a nuclear reactor while it's running. So I think that it would be a difficult task, but I don't know. I mean, if another country wanted to invade one and who doesn't have nuclear capability yet and take it, yeah, I mean, that's always a chance, but I'm willing to bet that there's policy. I mean, there's quite a bit of policy around. I mean, there's been 667 reactors since 1950, and there hasn't been nuclear proliferation yet. Not that you should say, okay, we're good now, but goes to show you it seems to be a little bit more of a difficult task than just walking in. But that's that's just my take. So
I think the other side of that is also the geopolitics of who has fossil fuels. Like there's nuclear proliferation, but there's also, not really great actors pulling the strings of our economy because they hold on to the resources that we're currently relying on. So, like, separating ourselves from that supply chain might give us even more security than the threat of, that's very counter to the threat of nuclear proliferation or weaponification.
Weaponization.
Weaponization, thank you.
There we go.
I like the gamification, weaponification.
I had a question, Colin, on the small modular reactors. And I was just trying to visualize it. Like you put a couple facts out. Like, is it small enough to power like a city block? Or are you talking it's like a single house? Like how small when you get to the small modular reactors? It just in my brain, I was trying to conceptualize it.
Yeah. So I guess like from a number wise, like it's basically a third the size of a typical reactor. So a normal reactor can power 1 million homes. So maybe 300 is, 300,000, 350,000 homes. That's what I would put it at. I actually don't have it in front of me, but that would be that would be able to wrap your brain around that number, 300 versus 1,000. And then, sorry.
Sorry, so like City of Vancouver might have 2 or 3 for the whole like Lower Mainland. I was just trying to get in my head what that looked like.
Well, 350, 330, 350,000 homes, that's like 1 million people roughly, right?
Oh yeah, true.
And so, you're
Right.
basically talking like Indianapolis.
Got it. And then my second question was, you mentioned the storage waste, and so do they? And you said the U.S. doesn't have a great solution. So are they just like storing it and then just like put it in the ground? Are they just like leaving it in those big concrete cylinders? Like what are they doing? Like how are they not doing what you think they should be doing with the waste?
So the reason why if my keys are typing is because I'm trying to get the pictures that I had previously. But yeah, no. So I mean, it's a process. So first, it's immediately put into cooling pool, and it's there actually for like 5 years. Then they take it out, separate the high level from the low level. But it is put in these dry cask storages, and it's stored on site. But I mean, they had the canyon, and the name of it. Somebody could probably educate me on. I forget it. It's not in my brain, but they did create a storage, like not a deep geological storage, but into a mountain where you could put it all. And that the funding for that got shut down in the U.S.
Yucca Mountain, which
Yeah.
is in Nevada,
Mhm.
and there's a NIMBY situation. Like, everybody in Nebraska is cool with it going into Nevada, but man, if you're in like Las Vegas, Carson City, or Reno, you may be saying, no,
Yeah.
let's find some place out by Omaha.
Yeah. So it's they're all in casks right now. And waiting to be then transported whenever they figure it out. But even then, I mean, it's sitting, it's constantly monitored for radiation. It's not a high amount, but definitely, I'm not going to say that we shouldn't do anything. They have to figure out what to do with it. Here, I'll just very quickly like that.
Oh yeah, got it.
All these casks. That's Duke's, or is that Duke's? Somebody else's? Yeah. So, and it's constantly being monitored.
Got
So
it.
it's like cask beer, really.
Yeah. And is that like Jackie? Is that something different than what they're doing in France, for example, or is it the same type of storage system in these other countries?
I actually have no idea what the Europeans are doing with their nuclear waste. That would be interesting to look into.
Some of it they do have storage, and then like as mentioned, France and Russia actually have a way to reprocess it. They have reprocessing plants, so they're actually reusing it. So they both have storage sites, and they're reusing it. And Japan and China are both just in the beginnings of creating reprocessing plants.
Got it.
I think it's worth noting that the amount of waste, like the volume of waste, is really, really small. Like it seems like it's this big problem, but it's really like on a volume basis, like half a swimming pool for how many homes are being served by that electricity
Yeah,
is like actually pretty incredible.
yeah, no, it's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan. Glad we're vibing. Yeah, no, it's 70 million homes or 7 million people homes. I'll have to go back to my slide, but yeah, I mean it's impressive. And again, like we already know how to dispose of it. It's actually the only energy source where there's a plan on how to dispose of it. Doesn't have the finalized plan. You have to reuse it or put it deep geological, but it's there. So, yeah.
So I've got a quick question. You said there were like 93 plants in the States. How many are in Canada?
Canada, yeah, I don't know. It's just too cold. Yeah, uranium doesn't work there. I'm from Winnipeg. I can imagine.
Winnipeg's screwed. No power.
It's cold here. Yeah.
Too cold.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I honestly don't know, and
I don't think it's any. I think they were looking to. They
There
were
is
looking
one
in
outside of
Edmonton, but I know
Canada.
like they were looking at modular for like rural, like First Nations communities as well, which is kind of an interesting application.
Yeah.
But
There's
one
six of them in Canada.
Pickering power plant. They've been talking about decommissioning it. There's conversation about extending its life. I think they did, but it was built in the 70s. And it's really the only one that I'm just aware of, top of mind, that is working in Canada that anyone's been talking about.
Yeah, well, that's why, I mean, yeah, a lot of these just from when they started. So a lot of them are set to be decommissioned, as I mentioned. So that's why like advocacy means a lot. Because even I'm somebody who wants to add more. Like I want to add more nuclear, but if you're not even for that, you definitely don't want to get rid of what we have right now. You want to keep and you want to renew the licensing on it. Have another 30 years for all of our other renewables to mature. And then just in Canada actually has a ton of hydropower, right? Like Hydro Manitoba is what I grew up on. So they're actually pretty solid in that. I know Montreal sells their hydro to New York now.
So who are the Kardashians? Who's changing the narrative?
Colin's a Kardashian. That guy's such a princess.
You know that there was a story of, you know, that tap from tap to toilet or from toilet to tap. Somebody coined that term. You know, there's water purification plants. There were a couple of test sites, you know, somewhere in the States, I think in California. They've started and failed a few because people, they can't get buy-in. Somebody said, I'm not toilet to tap, no way, I'm not. And that terminology sort of stuck. And back to that easy to retrieve where we bias towards the negative. There was a case study. There's a test facility somewhere in the States, and I apologize, I don't know where it is, where they entered the community first with education, with awareness, with conversation before they even, you know, put any bricks in the ground, before they built this facility. But what's ending up happening is that it's accepted, it's understood. People don't have that fear. That's not the first experience they had with it, and people are comfortable with their purified water. They understand the process it went through before it got into their glass, and it may have come from a toilet, but it's certainly not, you know, the toilet water that you're thinking. You know, I'm in marketing, right? Communication and marketing is so persuasive, and why, you know, there seems to be a massive gap in misunderstanding just from what you're talking about and what the general perception, I think, would be.
Yeah, no, it's why I'm such a shitty person to have at a party, because I'll ask people how they feel about nuclear, and then I'll try to persuade them. So that's why I don't get invited a lot of places.
Wait a minute. I'm gonna share now my screen. This is just for those who are wondering, nuclear power reactors as of May last year. So you can see.
Wow, 19.
Canada. Yeah, Canada actually, if it's 10% of the US in population, is over indexing compared to US by you know, reactors.
We also have but for percentage wise though, the US, I mean, we have 20% reactors, but that's where France, I mean, they have less reactors, but they're 70%. So it makes up more, but I mean still
yeah, per capita, France is killing it.
Yeah, but still, yeah.
But Canada not doing badly. I mean, it's still not enough. India, I guess, developing.
Well, there's 50. So currently there's 54 nuclear reactors being developed, and it's like India, China, Russia. So it's actually a lot more on the developing side. With that being said, you also don't want to go to a country that's like very at the beginnings of developing, because you don't have the expertise to actually run the nuclear. Like if you sent me there, I'd be like, all right, I don't know what to do. So I think other people would be of that same nature.
UK under indexing in my view, but maybe that's
good on them.
And hardly any in Latin America when you look at it. When you think of population, Argentina population is about the same as the UK.
We got somebody from Czechia on here, eh?
We have Czech. I don't see. Wait, is Slovenia represented nuclear wise?
No,
Yes.
guys, go back
Yeah.
and talk to your people.
Slovenia's right there. But Brazil,
You keep that thing open.
Brazil, 250 million people, too.
Yeah, but again, it comes to expertise. Like Brazil's, I don't know, what would Brazil be considered developing?
Developing. They're considered developing, but still.
So, like China, Russia, people who are have the economics for it and the expertise is where you're going to see more of it probably.
So, do you think that, or what do you think? It is a chicken egg question. What do you think is the key? Getting public support behind it, or advancing the technology to make it cheaper, perceived safer?
Well,
like, because
they're both. I mean, they're both different pillars, and we are all of us here. Maybe not Jackie. We all feel like I'm not going to be able to progress the technology in any which way. I can support it through funding to an extent, but all you can do necessarily, you can advocate, because like I was against nuclear like 3 years ago, and then all of a sudden I started like learning about it, and I'm like, holy, like this thing really needs to be rebranded. So I really think it is changing the stigma, and you are seeing. I had a slide there that nuclear is at the highest acceptance rate in like 30 years, and so the more that we can change the stigma around it, the easier it will be to adopt. But I think, the technology needs to also lend itself and actually prove itself to show that it's economically viable. Because if you have overruns, if you have these overruns that are 4 or 5 years, and all of a sudden it's three times the cost, people aren't going to be thrilled about it. And maybe hydrogen will probably then play a bigger role. But the critics of it, there's other people who are pretty large critics of it, and that would be their main thing. So got to make sure, Bill Gates is rolling this thing out properly. Technology's there.
Because I'm thinking, is there a way? Is there through Bill Gates? Was it TerraPower? Where we go to TerraPower and say, "Hey, we have athletes. Let's use them as spokespeople in a public service campaign."
I would love it.
To argue for more, not all nuclear power, more nuclear as a bigger part of the energy mix in a decarbonized world. I know that isn't soundbitey, but I'm thinking of this. I'm thinking of this on the fly.
Yeah. No, I think that'd be cool if anybody wants to head that. I think
anybody know Mr. Gates?
He's a cousin. He's a friend cousin. Yeah.
I'm like, okay, this is something I'm gonna noodle about.
If you could go, I mean, I'll send you like the top small modular reactors, and if you want to go, or even like Department of Energy. I mean, there's tons of people who are looking for advocacy, and people just kind of
is there money in this that was in the Inflation Reduction Act, part of the?
Yep, it's a part of it. Not big enough in my opinion, but it is also its own separate thing that they have passed.
For those of you not from the U.S., the Inflation Reduction Act was the law passed last year, I guess, by Congress, signed into law by President Biden, that has in it the biggest chunk of kind of federal investment in climate mediation of any government anywhere, blah, blah, blah. It's still not enough, but also, and I was just wondering how much nuclear was involved in that.
Yeah, not too heavy, but I'm not going to complain. That thing was fantastic. Big fan of the IRA.
I'm a big fan because to get it through in the way the Congress is now is very hard to get anything through.
Well, it was all Democrat. It was an all Democrat politics or Congress, but we'll go into politics at another time.
Right. But
that'll be my next talk.
Actually, I'm going to stick with it for 1 second because what's interesting is when you find Republicans, and there are few, very few, and this is again US centric, so forgive me.
Yeah.
But who are quote climate forward or whatever, needs at least not climate anti. They say, well, we got to have more nuclear. We got to have more nuclear. And so, but when you challenge them, when you say, okay, yeah, let's do it, they don't want to do the funding.
Somebody's got to pay for it, right?
Right. But it's just like, I mean, I'm sorry. It's like when you talk about guns. Oh, no, it's all about mental health. Okay, let's fund mental health. No, we're going to cut mental health. So, like, come, as Keyshawn Johnson says on Monday Night, come on, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll knock out guns in America on our next talk. So, man, yeah, I could definitely go into that as well. But
you did a hell of a job here, though.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for joining. Don't want to take up too much of your time. If you guys have more questions, I mean, if you guys want to keep shooting the shit, everybody's. I was gonna say everybody. Their description of what they're doing now, I find interesting and would love to chat more. So,
well, we are going to start. Because we had a poll, and the winning. We're going to start a WhatsApp group for the champions, and working on getting Slack. We'll do the WhatsApp first because that's easy, and then we can have subgroup. Maybe we could have a nuclear power subgroup in WhatsApp amongst champions, and then can chat with each other. And then Slack, I'm just trying to get a good nonprofit deal for a big Slack. So
nice.
Awesome. Yeah, one last thing. If anybody has a topic that they want to learn more about, hit me up. I love researching. So
awesome.
Yeah.
What a resource.
I ain't got no job.
Wait, we
doesn't get invited to any parties either. So there's lots of time on his hands.
Yeah,
wait a minute. We buried the lead here. We didn't bury the nuclear spent fuel, but we buried the lead, which is that Colin is a new dad.
Yeah.
For the first time.
Maps. Got a daughter, August. Yeah.
That's why his presentation has no pictures. He had no sleep in the last month.
The solid chirp. Love it.
She's due in August. You're gonna have a little Leo girl.
Oh no. Her name is August.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
I think she was born in March, right?
Yeah, born in March. We found out in August, and just I don't know, like the name.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah. Again, good chatting with everybody. Really fun.
This is awesome, Colin. Thanks.
Thanks, Colin. Thanks, Lou, for putting it on.
And remember, Eco Athletes Champions, if you have a topic you would like to discuss in this kind of TED-ish X style to the champions, well, you now have two options. You can come to me directly and say you will do it, or you can simply offload it to Colin, who will not only research it, but will give the topic, the talk for you. Right. So let me know.
Are we able to disseminate that information among our current college champions who might need some research help for whatever project papers they have coming up next year?
They can just use ChatGPT.
Yeah. He's not giving Colin GPT because we have some really active, as Enya knows, some really active NCAA student athletes who will take you up on that at all times.
Great. I'll do it. I'll write some papers. Beautiful.
All right. Well, thank you again, Colin. Great job. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Hey, everybody.
Have a good day.
And a good trip to Detroit.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And Sarah, great to see you.
I have to quickly share something with you.
With me?
So, yeah.
Oh my God, Enya. I am so excited for you. Okay, go.
Yeah, so quickly, I have to run. I'm packing, so it's a mess in here. So I have a friend, actually, a really good friend. He works with all the top 500 Fortune CEOs and all the top level executives. So in case there's something big ever gonna to happen, I can always pull on him and ask him, hey, would you mind, and could you, because he has all the phone numbers, all the emails of them, all the
That's a
contacts.
good friend to have.
Yeah, so in the either near or long future, I can pull up some strings with that as well.
Well, first of all, that's freaking awesome. Second of all, I'm sending out an email either today or tomorrow to get the group together. That is you, Riley, Sadie, Elena, to even further blow out the college thing, because I think this is gonna, college and alumni, I think this is gonna be the biggest thing that Eco Athletes does.
Okay.
And how did you like Colin's? I mean, I know the visuals were challenged, but whatever.
Yeah. No, I liked it. Definitely learned a lot. I also had a class similar to this, so I already knew the basics. So it's fun to listen to. And maybe hopefully the connection that I gave to him, maybe there's something there. I don't know. But yeah.
You know what? And this was a good group today.
Yeah, it was
All
fun.
right. Go ahead and
All
pack.
right.
Ciao.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.